Hello there, world of tankers. Welcome to the channel. I'm your host, Droodles Blitz, and in today's video, I am going to be showcasing to you why Wargaming's balancing team does not understand how to make vehicles properly balanced and distinct from each other. In front of us, we have the CS63. And I was thinking to myself yesterday, why the heck did Wargaming make another legendary camo for this vehicle? We already have a pretty sick Starcatcher, which I think is one of the coolest legendary camos they've put into the game, to be entirely honest. It's got a lot of animations, it looks sick overall. I think that this is a really, really cool camo. And it's actually one of the better ones Wargaming has done. But for some reason, at least to Wargaming's minds, nobody's grinding the CS63. It must be because they still think it's bad, but now we've buffed it, and it's pretty good. So, you guys should get the CS. That's why we're making a new legendary camo for it, so that you can be enticed to grind down this line. That's most likely what Wargaming was thinking, that not enough people were grinding this tank, so we need to make another camo for it. That way people are reminded this tank exists, and they can grind it. But, in reality, the CS63 is just a worse Leopard 1. And it's not in, like, a couple characteristics. It's worse in virtually every single way, which I will be showcasing in today's video by heading over to the armor. We can see in front of us a Leopard 1 and the CS. And I have the exact same equipment on both vehicles, as we can see. Exactly the same. And everything else is pretty basic. So we're just going to scroll through the stats. And you're going to see why nobody's playing the CS63. And I won't lie, it's actually a pretty fun vehicle. I've been doing fairly well in it on my main account here with 3,300 average damage and over a 70% win rate. Like, I do fine in it, but it's still a worse Leopard in every single way. So, if we make our way here, let's take a look at what we got. So, first of all, DPM, the Leopard has 330 more, which is kind of wild when you think about it. Or not 330, it's just about 300 DPM more. But still, that is a massive DPM advantage for the Leopard 1. The fact that the CS63 has 20 less damage per shot, yet still has a longer reload than the Leopard, shows you just how DPM crazy the Leopard 1 is. But it doesn't just stop there. The Leopard also has more AP penetration and way more premium pen. The CS has APCR premium, which as we know is one of the worst premium shells because it doesn't get the benefits of a lot of shell normalization at 2 degrees, and as well, it only has 305 mils of pen. That's like 310, 12 effective versus the 340 that the Leopard 1 has. In other words, if you're aiming in on the U100 in the CS, you're not going to pen it. If you're aiming in on an E100 turret with the Leopard, you can actually pen it. That's a huge disadvantage for the CS, and once again, the alpha is obviously less. It's not as big of a difference, though. We can actually see when loading gold, the Leopard drops a whopping 600 damage per minute, where the CS doesn't lose as much, interestingly enough there, but it doesn't really make that much of a difference when the Leopard has such a better gun in all the other characteristics of alpha, DPM, and reload. So if we scroll down to shell velocity, well, yeah, not even close. The CS has 1,000 meters a second, the Leopard has 1,478. Even when loading gold, the Leopard still has more shell velocity with heat rounds than the CS does firing APCR. Again, kind of wild when you think about that. The shell capacity, oh boy, you got more in the CS. Too bad the alpha's less, so even that doesn't make a difference. Aiming time, the CS has slightly better. 5%. However, the base dispersion of the CS is 13% worse. The on-movement dispersion values are 30% worse when moving the tank and traversing the hull, and the turret traverse dispersion, meaning when you're turning your turret to look at somebody, is 40% worse. So yes, while you may have a 5% better aiming time on paper, in reality you have about a 40% longer aiming time. When you're also shooting, the gun is much less accurate after shot. Yeah. Gun depression-wise, the CS has 1 more degree, which I guess is an advantage, but not one you're going to notice all too much on most ridgelines. When it comes to the top speed, well, the CS can go 62 and the Leopard can go 67, making the Leopard quite a bit faster. Reverse speed, both tanks are the same. This is with gear oil, obviously, but still, both tanks are exactly the same there. Now, you'll look at engine power and the power-to-weight ratio, and you'd think, oh, well, the CS is faster. It's got more engine power. However, look at the terrain resistance values. The Leopard has 40% better terrain resistance. On medium, it has 36%, and on soft, 33%. In other words, it means that the CS63, while it has a better power to weight on paper, has a much worse power to weight and effective top speed on any real world situation. So the actual power to weight of the CS63 is 23, where it is 36.5 in the Leopard 1. On medium terrain, the Leopard is about 30% faster, and on soft terrain, the Leopard is still about 30% faster. What that means is that in every single situation, the Leopard 1 is going to accelerate faster to its top speed and reverse faster as well. The turret traverse speed is essentially the same on both tanks. Traverse speed, though, don't worry, it's slower on the CS63 on all terrain as well. Now, the CS does have a slight hit point advantage at around 1872 versus the 1820 on the Leopard, but that's really not a noticeable difference between the two vehicles. View range-wise, the tanks are the exact same, but don't worry, the Leopard has 11% more camo. On move, it has better camo. It has better camo while shooting and moving. It's way better camo values. And the tank is, well, a little bit bigger, which doesn't even make sense. The Leopard is a larger tank, yet has better camo values. Yep, and this is why nobody is playing the CS63 Wargaming. Why would you ever drive the CS when the Leopard 1 is better in every single frickin' regard? It makes no sense. It actually really irritates me. And I actually like the CS. It's a solid vehicle. I do well in it, as I showed, and it has some really good mechanics going for it, like gear oil, tungsten. It also has adaptive concealment, but so does the Leopard. And this is the major problem with Wargaming. They release vehicles that are flat better than every other type of that tank. And because of that, it defeats the purpose of all the other vehicles. The Leopard 1 is overpowered in its current state. Yes, I know it is still a tricky tank for certain people to drive, but if you know what you're doing, the Leopard 1 is by far one of the most influential tanks. It has more damage per minute than just about every tank destroyer. It has more accuracy than any other medium in the game, and now features a stupid adaptive concealment ability allowing you to outspot and outposition your opponents. And not only that, the thing has every advantage now with gear oil. And because of that, it makes the CS63 entirely irrelevant and really no reason to play. And it's not just the CS63. It's also vehicles like the 907. The 907, I mean, yeah, it has some turret armor, but I'd still rather drive a Leopard with its way more damage per minute. Even with rammer, this tank only reaches 3,300. The Object 140 is completely pointless. Why would you ever drive an Object 140 when you can drive a Leopard? I mean, I'll pull up the 140 stats in a moment. The 30B, I do like the fact that it has more turret armor. Its hull armor is a bit more cringe, but Wargaming nerfed the turret armor on the 30B. And then decided, yeah, let's also nerf the DPM back to what it was originally. So with calibrated shells on the 30B, you are sitting at 3,118 damage per minute, where the Leopard 1 has 3,600. Why? I don't know. The 30B also does not feature better top speed because Wargaming nerfed that as well. It doesn't feature adaptive concealment. It doesn't have any special consumables apart from reticle cali, but even the Leopard has better base dispersion. The decision-making behind Wargaming is boggling to my mind. It really is. If you're going to drive a lightly armored medium, there's almost no point to drive any of them, apart from, I guess, auto-reloaders like the Progetto or Lion, when it comes to the just capabilities of a Leopard 1. It really defeats it. I mean, the Object 140, as I mentioned, is a great example. We can add the Object 140 into this comparison, which is a tier 10 Soviet tech tree medium. And the Object 140 is a pretty fun tank, right? We can do the same equipment, apply to all, so both tanks have the exact same equipment, except you don't get anything special here on the 140. So take a look at DPM. Well, the 140 is less. The reload speed is faster, but you have 50 less damage per shot, and it's not even that much of a faster reload when you actually look at it. Penetration-wise, the Leopard has more. Heat pen-wise, the Leopard has more. So both of those values, the 140 is doing worse. Shell velocity, both tanks are almost the same, as we can see, but look at that shell velocity drop-off when loading gold with the Object 140. Once again, a big advantage. We take a look at the dispersion on move, and believe it or not, the 140 is slightly more accurate. However, its aiming time is longer, its base dispersion is 7% worse, so even though you do have better on movement dispersion, the other values are still worse, and the turret on move dispersion is the same. So really, it's only when you're moving your tank and you're shooting on move that the Object 140 is going to be better. Everything else the Leopard still wins in. Gun depression, the 140 has one less degree, and it's also slower in terms of top speed, way slower in terms of reverse. It has a worse power to weight ratio. And if we take a look at the actual effective power to weights, I mean, yeah, the 140 is really fast on power to weight, but on medium terrain, it's not that much of a difference, as we can see, only an 8% difference. And by the way, I should mention, I could make my Leopard even faster if I wanted to. I could go over to my consumables here. I could take off a small chocolate, which would make my reload a tiny bit longer, and I could put on improved fuel. And doing this, if we go back down to the mobility characteristics, now the Leopard 1 is really fast, as actually we can see almost the same in terms of effective power to weight ratio on all the terrain. And not only that, just the Leopard completely smokes in most of the other areas. The camouflage values of these tanks are very similar, as we can see on move, while shooting, and it just doesn't make sense. Like, I just don't really see why you would ever drive most of the tanks that are lightly armored when this vehicle exists. But it's not just tanks like the Leopard. You pull out the M48 Patton. What's the point of driving most mediums that are known for decent turret armor when you can pull out a Patton, which now features gear oil, which now has reactive armor, and everything else? The M60 is irrelevant now that the M48 Patton got the buff. The STB-1 is pretty irrelevant now that the Patton has this buff. And don't get me wrong, the STB is still a really strong tank, but I would much rather drive an M48 Patton over the STB-1. And it's not just these tanks. The 62A, I mean, this thing Wargaming just battered to all hell. It's kind of pointless to drive now. I don't know. It's just... It seems like, to me, Wargaming doesn't understand how to make balanced tanks because they have a few vehicles which just completely defeat the purpose of the rest and are so much better than the rest that it just doesn't make sense, really, to me. And I think a lot of you guys are probably seeing that as well lately, you know, especially with, like, super heavies. Why would you ever drive a super heavy, especially one like the VK72 with its high alpha, when you can just drive a 60 TP and just do better? The 60 is more mobile than the VK72. It has more armor, and funny enough, it's got 2,700 hit points. My VK72 with enhanced sandbags is 2,695. It doesn't even make sense. This tank is a super heavy, which I'm running extra HP on, and extra HP on improved M70, and yet it's slower, has worse turret armor, worse accuracy than the 60 TP. Not only that, it's even got less alpha damage. Both of them feature tungsten, except this tank doesn't get gear oil. The 60 does. Basically, most high alpha tanks seem to be defeated just by the 60 TP. And this is the world that we are living in when it comes to Blitz. Wargaming simply does not acknowledge that they create tanks completely unbalanced from each other, and they don't know how to create them well. And this is why we arrive to problems, where certain tanks are just spammed in the meta, and others aren't. This is why you don't see super heavies being used anymore, because there's really no point to drive super heavies when you can drive, you know, basic heavies, which do a much better job. Take the mouse, for example, right? The mouse has all of this HP, 3,000 hit points if you're running it with improved assembly paired with enhanced sandbags, right? You've got decent DPM at around 2,500 with calibrated shells, but could just run an IS-7, and the IS-7 will have reliably just about as good, if not better, armor than the mouse. The IS-7 has about the same DPM, as we can see. With rammer, the IS-7 is only about 100-ish less, and it has tungsten, making it so that you can actually have more damage per minute. This tank is faster. It has way better turret armor with no hatches. I don't know. I find it very confusing on the balancing because I want to drive a lot of tanks and enjoy them all. But it seems like to me Wargaming just doesn't understand how to balance each one individually, and instead they just make certain ones way better than the rest, and because of that you see some of these vehicles spammed, while the rest kind of sit and rot. And the E6 is the greatest example lately. The E6 was always a really solid tank after it got the damage per minute buff, but Wargaming said, you know what, that's not enough. When we're going to give it PBR, let's make it so that the hatch is now basically impossible to pen for most mediums when loading gold. And we'll make it really troll for even heavies. You have to hit the shot, and not only that, you have to hit it dead on, and you have to still pen it, which half the time it doesn't. And when you pair that with the fact that the E6 has the highest damage per minute for a heavy in tier 10, the fact that it's accurate, the fact that it's mobile, I don't know. I just don't understand why you would drive most mediums when you can pull out a T95 E6. It's very confusing, but that's the way Blitz is going nowadays. Let me know in the comments down below what you guys think, but I don't know. I just find the game very disappointing when Wargaming doesn't know how to balance a lot of the tanks. I wish they would listen to the players on what needs to be changed. I wish they would just sit down and talk with me, but oh well. Hopefully you enjoyed today's video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.